R. Kelly is spending more time in prison after being sentenced federally for child and enticement of minors for. He got 20 years in prison today. He will serve all but one of those years simultaneously.
This is not me, y'all. I'm fighting for my life. Y'all me with this. I gave y'all 30 years of my around.
Robert.
30 years.
So they're lying on you. That's your explanation. They're lying on you.
Absolutely.
R. Kelly has always been seen as a. But what if I told you he wasn't always like this? What if I told you there was a certain moment in his life that turned him into the he is today?
Oh, I mean, it has affected me in a way, though. Yeah. It affected me in this way. Anything that I've been through, that or any struggles I've had in my past, has affected my music.
No, the experts will tell you this. Most people who are have been but not all people that have been go out and others.
Okay.
And so that's why I asked the question.
That's what the experts said?
That is what the experts say.
All.
Kelly's background of A started when he was a little boy. The disgraced artist confesses to a family member's SM station in an interview with Tavis Smiley from 2012. His A by a female relative started when he was about 8 years old and persisted until he was 14 years old.
I didn't know what had happened to me, but I fell off of the bike and next thing you know, I was in the hospital.
This mistreatment woke up his hormones and enhanced his curiosity before it was time. During an interview with GQ magazine in 2016, Kelly discussed his S awakening and the years of SA in great detail. At first, I couldn't judge it, he says to me when I ask him if he realized at the time that a really bad thing was happening. I remember it feeling weird. I remember feeling ashamed. I remember closing my eyes or keeping my hands over my eyes. I remember those things, but couldn't judge it one way or the other fully. And did that change over time? Over time, yeah. I remember actually, after a couple of years, looking forward to it sometimes, you know, acting like I didn't but did. R. Kelly 8/20/2016 GQ magazine interview. Despite suffering from SA for a long time, Kelly never sought therapy or assistance. A case of SA that was swept under the rug by his family is all too common in our communities. This led R. Kelly to develop hyper-S tendencies. The Foundation for Post-Traumatic Healing and Complex Trauma Research reports that within the United States, 1 in 6 males and 1 in 4 women experienced SM station before the age of 18. SA youngsters, according to the foundation, go through psychological and physiological changes.
Y'all trying to me! You man! This is not about music! I'm trying to have a relationship with my kids!
Changes in the brain, delays in growth, and difficulty adjusting to school are all physical symptoms that a kid may face. Internal injuries can occur in a kid who has been SA. Victims of childhood SA typically internalize their feelings of anger, shame, and despair, which can lead to significant behavioral issues like impulsivity, aggression, delinquency, ADHD, and substance misuse. According to Dr. Darren Moore, a certified psychotherapist and proprietor of the counseling and consulting business I Am More, LLC, SA, and trauma can cause long-term repercussions, such as anxiety, depression, and S acting out that can persist into adulthood. He argues that there is still a stigmatization of SA, particularly of black males, within the black community. When we think about the African-American community, we can speak about the stigma of mental health overall and the reluctance to consider seeing a mental health professional. Another taboo that exists in the black community is talking about young male victims. We live in a society where it is not viewed as an issue, and we don't allow space for the experiences of young boys. In addition, Dr. Moore states, when it comes to young black boys and SA, there is a silencing of their voices. Sometimes it's done by themselves based on what the perceived reaction will be by those closest to them. Kelly's accusers have been frequently chastised for waiting too long to identify their AR, but this is normal among victims of S trauma and AR. Kelly has exacerbated the situation by never naming his A. Victims often feel compelled to protect their A, and Kelly has done so for decades. Kelly's lawyer asked for mercy in his Brooklyn sentence, claiming that early trauma caused hyper-S activity and impaired cognitive function. According to Insider, Kelly's lawyer filed 2 reports from psychologists alleging that Kelly's older sister SMD him and his brothers for many years. According to the document, Kelly's landlord and a family friend both reportedly SMD him. Kelly referred to his SA as a generational curse in previous interviews. abuse. According to the Time's Up Foundation, victims may cope by focusing on their perpetrator's loving side and shutting out the A, while maintaining contact in order to elicit such affirmative behavior from the A. Victims frequently blame themselves for the incident and convince themselves, or the A, that an A was not what they thought it was. In a prior interview, Kelly said he forgiven his A. I definitely forgive them. As I'm older, I look at it and I know that it had to be not just about me and them, but them and somebody older than them when they were younger, and whatever happened to them when they were younger. I looked at it as if there was a sort of I don't know, a generational curse, so to speak, going down through the family, not just started with her doing that to me. As long as Kelly sold millions of CDs and sold out global tours, the music industry disregarded his personal shenanigans. R. Kelly is not alone in alleged S misconduct. Trey Songz, Russell Simmons, and rapper Mystical are just a handful of the artists who have made news for alleged A, R, or misbehavior in recent years. Despite decades of claims against Kelly, his music is still played at parties, gatherings, on streaming sites, and on select radio stations, with black women constituting the vast majority of his admirers. Despite clear evidence that Kelly participated in inappropriate behavior with underage females, including as with R&B star Aaliyah, whom he married when she was 15, he is still supported by many in the community who believe he was unfairly persecuted because he is a black man of amazing talent and ability. While it's true that some survivors of SA go on to perpetrate such acts themselves, R. Kelly was an exception. Because of his inability to overcome his SA, his obsession with controlling his surroundings, and the power and influence that came with his celebrity status, Kelly was allowed unrestricted freedom to live his life in the public eye. According to Dr. Moore, a victim's sense of agency can be impacted by unresolved SA. It's important for them to get back the agency and control they lost throughout their victimization. Because he was surrounded by people who were enchanted by his fame and fortune, R. Kelly got used to hearing yes more often than no. Those people were more worried about the benefits of being in Kelly's entourage than they were about the disturbing trail of young girls Kelly was allegedly involved with. One particular thing has perplexed, confused, and enraged many people over the years. At the height of his legal difficulties concerning alleged SA, Kelly began referring to himself as the Pied Piper of R&B. It was astonishing enough that he continued to disclose extremely S records, but this could be interpreted as an innocent man's stubborn determination to change his ways. But naming himself the Pied Piper of R&B, of all things, came seen as a slur to many people. I started calling myself the Pied Piper, he explained, when I started using the flute sound in my music. He starts listing songs in which he used it. He mentions Fiesta and Snake. I mention Step in the Name of Love, the first of his own songs where he actually refers to himself by this name. I was the Pied Piper, you know, blew a flute. I started calling myself the Pied Piper because of the flute. The true meaning behind the Pied Piper is much more sinister. A guy known as the Pied Piper, because he dressed strangely, showed up with his flute and played a catchy tune. Surprisingly, all the rats in town happily followed him, only to vanish into the river and never come back. Then, the greedy town council made a bad call they'd regret forever. The people of Hamlin decided not to pay the Piper for his rat-catching gig, and they kicked him out of town. Big mistake. On June 26th, he came back for payback. This time, he didn't mess with the rats. Instead, he lured all the kids away with his music. They followed him, mesmerized, until they disappeared into a nearby mountain. Only 2 kids didn't go with the Piper. One was blind, the other couldn't speak, so nobody could fully explain what happened. Now consider this, and consider how R. Kelly called himself the Pied Piper. Yeah, it doesn't look too good for him. After being found guilty of various related to ST and racketeering in a New York court in 2022, a 30-year jail term was the consequence of a landmark legal ruling involving a famous figure. An additional federal trial took place in Chicago, and the result was a conviction for SA of children. Robert Sylvester Kelly, better known by his stage name R. Kelly, was this individual. Kelly wed singer Aaliyah in 1994 when she was 27 years old. Aaliyah was 15 years old. Claims that Aaliyah's age had been inflated on the marriage license led to the annulment of the marriage. Kelly's ex-tour manager admitted in court that he helped arrange Aaliyah's marriage by getting her a false ID. In the years that followed, Kelly's legal issues persisted. The 3-year connection, which Tiffany Hawkins claimed began when she was 15 years old, was the basis for her 1996 lawsuit against him for bodily harm and emotional distress. Court was not needed to resolve this matter. In 2001, Kelly was sued by Tracy Sampson, a former intern, who claimed that he had a S encounter with her when she was 17 years old. old. Similarly, this matter was resolved without the need for a judicial hearing. Montina Woods and Patrice Jones were among those who made accusations, and their cases were settled out of court. Kelly was finally cleared of all allegations in 2008 following a protracted trial that began in 2002 and centered around tapes purportedly showing child SA. But other accusations followed, including one in Florida for creating images of child SA. All eyes were back on Kelly in 2017 after a BuzzFeed article outlined allegations that she ran a S cult, returning the spotlight to her. Record companies and streaming platforms were pressured to cut connections with Kelly as survivors spoke out, and the #MuterKelly campaign gained momentum. Kelly was indicted on numerous charges of SA in 2019 after a documentary brought attention to the accusations. Trials for Kelly took place in 2021 and 2022, and she was found guilty on multiple counts, including ST and child SA. The legal drama continued. He faced lengthy prison terms, but the legal process continued with trials in Chicago and continuous appeals. The ex-manager of R. Kelly received a 20-month prison term in November 2022 for his role in the singer's victimized person stalking and harassment. In an effort to hush the lady Kelly battered, Donald Russell admitted to utilizing threats and intimidation. In his pursuit of preventing her from testifying against Kelly, he even resorted to uploading images of her online under a pseudonym. A Chicago prosecutor dismissed part of Kelly's allegations in January 2023. The prosecution decided that justice had been served even though no conviction had resulted from dropping these allegations, which had been pending since 1998. After that, Kelly was sentenced to 20 years in jail for against children in February 2023. This followed his guilty verdict in 2022 for creating child S imagery and luring kids for S. The good news for Kelly's legal team is that the majority of his sentence, although substantial, will run concurrently with his prior 30-year prison term. If the Chicago trial had come first, the judge said, he would have handed down a stiffer punishment. Now, what do you think he deserved? Let us know in the comments below.